Is my pen up?
Did I have to have my picture taken?
No.
Black one there. Thank you.
I just want to repeat what Richard said is welcome to the, let's see, as we define the United States, this would be the Mid-East regional meeting of the International Academy, spring meeting of the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology. And that I'm glad to see the nice turnout to hear some of the updated information that we're going to get in an excellent meeting that Rich has lined up for us. And that I also wanted to blow the horn of the Academy just a little bit. And I'm not a founding member, although we have about half a dozen of the founding members of the Academy with us today. That I became involved in the Academy in 1985 when I heard that there was going to be a Midwest regional meeting, and went and heard Murray and Mike and a few other people, Carl Savary back when he was alive. And I think it was at that meeting that we concluded that based on the available scientific evidence, we had to recommend that there be no further use of dental amalgam until the scientific evidence was produced that would allow us to say that it would be safe. In other words, we put patient protection ahead of the continued use of that material. The Academy was founded based on science. Is that many of us have looked at some of the issues that have confronted dentistry. Should we put a glass ionomer here? Should we put a composite there? Should we put an implant here, et cetera, et cetera? And that much of that was just empirical. Oh, I put 10 implants in, they work just fine. That's empirical or anecdotal. And so what we wanted to do was to bring science into the issue of the safety of dental materials. And since that time, we have funded projects, at least one a year, and sometimes several a year, that is one of the reasons we're gathered here today, is to look at some of the more science, and Dr. Vimy is going to bring us up to date on some of his research, but it's because of the science that the issue has stayed before the scientific community and also the public, and it's because of the science that now we can make some statements that are absolutely factual about the safety of dental materials. And that I, for one, appreciate having people like Mike Ziff and Murray Vimy and the other resources, James Masi, in the Academy, that when I have a question about the science, I can go ask, I can call Jess Clifford and ask him about the reactivity of zirconium, for example. And that we have people in the Academy that have a tremendous depth of knowledge of immunology, toxicology, and that from all walks of life and all professions. We're not just dentists. And it's a pleasure for me to be associated with the Academy and be able to bring a higher level of learning and education to dentistry than many of us were exposed to in our undergraduate education. If you're not a member of the Academy and you're thinking of joining, let me tell you some of the benefits of membership. One, you get to associate with us. Which can either be considered a pain in the kazoo or could be a pleasure, depending on whether or not you can stand smoke. You have to be around Mike, you see, and so we do get our daily intake of secondhand smoke from Dr. Ziff. He's running an experiment, actually. Mike told me he's running an experiment. See, he doesn't think that smoking and heart disease are related. He thinks smoking and fillings and heart disease are related. So he's running an experiment to see if he can smoke a carton of cigarettes a day for the next 10 years and still be alive. I don't know that I support him in that particular approach because, you know, it's just anecdotal, but anyway, so if you see him and he's lining up, just realize that he's in the process of conducting an Academy-approved scientific experiment to see if secondhand smoke causes heart disease. But anyway, what other benefits of membership are there in the Academy? Well, you get to travel a lot because we have a meeting on this coast and that coast, and sometimes Canada, and sometimes down there, and sometimes over here. And I was in Rio with Mike and Murray, and I've been in Germany. And the Academy, by the way, is becoming the leader in the world for scientific information. Germany has listed us as their source for scientific information. A chapter is forming now in Australia. We have a chapter in Sweden. We have a chapter forming in Brazil. So the Academy is basically stepped into a void, a vacuum, and that dentists and physicians from all over the world are joining together because we actually act as a source of information. The Academy has a number of scientific presentations that are available on slides. and that if you wanted to talk in your own dental society or local meeting, I'm in a video study club, and that one of the things the Academy has is we have just a gob of videotapes of all of the Yos in the Academy giving various presentations on various topics, and that we get together once a month on the first Wednesday of the month. You guys can meet any day you like, and gals, but we watch a video, whether it's Gordon Christensen or Murray Vimy or somebody. We sit and watch a video, and then we critique it, so we can have a interplay among the people at the meeting. We stop and run it backwards and forwards, see if we agree with it, look up the references, etc., etc. So we have a lot of fun with video study clubs, and that's also a possibility with the Academy, because we have our own electronic technician, Wayne King. When he's not fixing teeth, he's also videotaping and recording all of the Academy meetings. And so if you notice, he's sitting here with a bunch of wires sticking out of him. He's just not an electronic bionic man. He's trying to make records of the Academy presentations so you guys and gals can take them home and share them with your colleagues back home, wherever that may be. I met Milt from Queens, and we have people from Montana, Tucson, from all over the United States have gathered at this meeting. So you get to meet dentists and learn the names and addresses of people from around the United States, and hear some of the state-of-the-art in scientific information. And that Milt pointed out to me that in the, was it New York Times?
Yes.
The New York Times had a front page article in the scientific section on Ann Summers' research and Murray's research on the bacterial changes in the guts of humans and animals because of the implantation of dental amalgam. So it's nice that some of the research that's partially funded by the Academy has made it all the way to the New York Times, as well as scientific journals. So anyway, that's some of the fun things. There's a lot more than meets the eye. Ron Dressler is our membership chairman. And stick your arm up again, Ron. They didn't see it. It's too short. Okay, good. So right up here in front is Ron Dressler. He has a membership application. So if any of you guys and gals are confused about what you want to do with your life, get involved in the Academy. I guarantee it'll ruin it. It'll just suck up all the spare time. However much you have. Forget the boat. You won't need it. And you can get involved and do something for humanity and also yourself. Thank you, Rich, for giving me the opportunity to address you.
Thanks, Dave. Our first speaker this morning, well, let me back up just one second. In putting this meeting together, what I tried to do is to get a rather eclectic group of speakers. If you look through the speakers, there's actually only one dentist speaking. We have an immunologist, a retired congressman, an attorney, a medical doctor, and a physicist. And there are issues that we're going to be dealing with today which really transcend dentistry per se and get into the whole larger topic of healthcare. Our first speaker is a graduate of Cornell University and the Brooklyn Law School. He served as page to the late U.S. Senator Jacob Javits. And his involvement in the health issue, in 1991, he co-founded the National Progressive Health Political Action Committee. This is the first political action committee in the United States that's ever been focused on freedom of health choice and freedom of access to health care for the public. And Tony Martinez is going to give us a broad view of how we in the public can communicate with the legislative arm of the government in order to ensure that as consumers that we have the right to go to the kinds of healthcare providers we want to, and that the healthcare providers have the freedom to offer the kinds of healthcare that is consistent with their own ethical and moral feelings. I got a call a couple of mornings ago from Tony, and he said, can we switch the schedule around a little bit? His wife is due to deliver any day, any time, any moment, And so he's going on first this morning to so he can shoot up to New York and be by his wife. So I am particularly appreciative of his being here this morning. I want to welcome Tony Martinez.
I won't get in front of you.
Thank you very much, Richard. And good morning to all of you. And appreciate that nice introduction, Richard. But basically, you know, who I am is just a concerned citizen, concerned about the future of healthcare in this country, concerned about protecting people's rights to be able to make choices about, informed choices about the kinds of health care that they receive, and to also to be able to have access to it. I know you're all here because you stand for that, to give people a choice in dentistry, to tell them what you know and what you understand about the real deal with mercury and other related issues dealing with oral health. And so I commend all of you for taking the time, because to come to this kind of conference and to be a member of this kind of an association, because of your stand for openness and to explore and give people basically a right to make a choice in healthcare. And that's ironically what's being taken away from us in this country. I'm sure some of you have been attacked professionally and personally because of the positions you've taken, because you're called into question a practice that has been used for so many years in this country, the use of mercury amalgams. But the time has come for you to give the public the story, and if need be, to make those changes, to move us to a transition to a better system, a more effective system, a less toxic or non-toxic system of health care in the area of dentistry. The same thing with all of the areas with alternative medicine. It's about giving people, again, choices and the information to make choices about the health care they receive and to work in partnership with their health care providers. So I started a political action committee on this issue. And I want to urge you all to do the same thing, because it's not enough for you to come together and give scientific conferences and symposiums. It's important for you to develop skills to effectively communicate with your public officials and candidates for office, so that they understand your concerns and the issues that what you are advocating here. Because that's exactly what every other interest does in this country. And so you have the means and the wherewithal to do that, and it's not a difficult task. It just takes all of you getting together and saying, okay, we are going to work to educate voters, we're going to work to educate candidates, we're going to work to support financially and politically, getting the vote out for the people who are running for office, who will make decisions about your professional future and also the framework upon which your profession is regulated. It's essential that you get involved, because the members of Congress or state legislators need to hear from their constituents. And you can do that by organizing yourselves into a political action committee. I take the view that a PAC is just not, it's not a, you know, the bad attachment to political action committees. Oh, they just give money away to candidates. It can be much, much more. It is also an organization that you can set up to educate people and to get the vote out and to really aggressively and assertively make your points known to people who are running for office or in government. So get politically involved. Second, I also want to urge you to consider at some point to have people hire a lobbyist or a group of people who have an understanding, an integral understanding of the government and the legislative and executive branches, so that way you can have an advocate, someone or group of people who are constantly monitoring what is going on, to be able to report back to you, to report back opportunities for legislative reform. And again, when you have a legislative initiative that you are in support of, to actually have an organized effort to bring the issue to the attention of members of Congress or state legislators. Because remember, in Washington, what is happening, or what happens is a member of Congress is always bombarded with issue after issue after issue. And it's a competition, really, of issues. And you need to have, in order to get attention, you need to have that persevering presence of someone who can educate staff and who can educate members on your issue and move forward in these areas. And at the same time, I want to urge you to get together with your patients. Your patients can be your strongest advocates for your profession, because they've come to you because of what you have to offer for them, and they can be quite persuasive to elected officials. And they need to hear, and elected officials usually only hear from the industry side of things, and never really enough from the people who are effectively consuming side. And ideally, you want a situation where you and your patients are allied together. So I'm also here really to tell you a story about something that's going on. I'm sure all of you have heard about the battles going on about the Food and Drug Administration and dietary supplements. I'm sure some of you recommended nutritional protocols to your patients. I'm the legislative advisor to an organization called the Nutritional Health Alliance, which I invite you to become a member of, a health professional member of, because it is an alliance of consumers, health professionals, and natural products industry members, whose purpose really is to get legislative reform in the area of regulation of these products. Why? Because the FDA has had such a heavy-handed regulatory approach to these products. For the last 50 years, the Food and Drug Administration and the medical community had said that dietary supplements, vitamins, minerals, herbs, amino acids, other nutritional substances, were only useful to prevent deficiency diseases, and that using them for anything else would give them just, quote, expensive urine. At the same time, though, we have seen time after time and attempt after attempt by this agency to regulate these products as drugs or unsafe food additives. This was dramatically demonstrated last year when black-jacketed FDA agents accompanied by armed state law enforcement officials going after misbranded vitamin B12 raided a doctor's office. The doctor's offense was that he was using German pharmaceutical-grade, preservative-free vitamin B12, and because the product was labeled in German and he had not gone through some administrative procedures of reporting that to the FDA, they just went after him in an armed raid. And I think that's outrageous and shameful that an agency like that would do that to a doctor as well as to the patients going in there, treating a doctor as if he was a common criminal, a drug dealer. And then at the same time, in the last year, we've seen federal court decisions that have questioned the regulatory integrity of this agency with respect to dietary supplements. In February, there was a federal court decision in Illinois which the FDA was told that they were using a Alice in Wonderland regulatory approach towards the regulation of a nutritional supplement called blackcurrant seed oil. Anyway, some sanity in regulation in this product, in regulation of these products is called for, that takes into account people's desire for health information and the related industries being empowered and held to the high standards of quality and safety. I think it's ironic that today and maybe you can relate this from within your own profession, you know, people can get more information on a pack of cigarettes and a can of Raid or insecticide about the health consequences of using that product than they can from a bottle of supplements. And probably the same thing for your patients who don't really understand the dangers of mercury amalgam. So this is why these groups got together and had legislation introduced in the Congress, in the Senate, and the House. And we need your support. We need professionals to let members of Congress know that this legislation is good and that it will protect people's rights to make choices, to be able to get information. Like today, women cannot go into a health food store and look at a bottle of folic acid and learn right from the label that if they are of childbearing age, that using folic acid will prevent birth defects, neural tube birth defects, a condition that affects 2,500 to 3,000 mothers and babies each year. That could be avoided if they were receiving adequate nutritional supplementation or eating the right foods. And we all know that with the American diet, very few people are eating everything that they are supposed to be as recommended by the public health agencies. So it's really, we have a big battle ahead of ourselves. And the good news is that this organization, this organizational effort, alternative medicine, is finally coming together, and the people and parties involved are making now sincere and earnest efforts to do the kind of rigorous scientific examination of the benefits of these alternative approaches to healthcare delivery. And I'm confident that within the next 10 years, as we'll see from a healthcare reform, that we're going to see a lot of these modalities being incorporated. Why? Because they are cost effective, they're non-toxic, and also they take into account, and I recommend this from your scientific people researching this, that what will persuade regulators more now, or what they're opening up to, is what they call outcomes research, which I'm sure some of you are aware of. That if you're getting a positive outcome, that becomes much more important as to the exact specificity of how you got to the positive outcome. I think that's important because some of this stuff, our country only uses one particular way to say something is proven. And some of these modalities just don't fit into that. And that's really the challenge of this Office of Alternative Medicine at the National Institutes of Health that was created in part by the good efforts of former Congressman Berkeley Riddell, who will be speaking to you later today, and he will share with you much more greater detail about what that office is doing and the challenges there. It represents a whole new approach, again, to examining our healthcare, because we learned in February that almost 1 out of every 3 Americans uses some kind of alternative healthcare, and that people are willing to pay for it, even if it's not reimbursable by insurance companies. Now, I'm confident that will change also with time, because we're going to find that the only kind of healthcare system that's going to work for this country is one that keeps people healthy in the first place, empowers them to health, and also does everything it can to prevent disease. And that's the only one that's going to be sustainable economically. And I think we're finally coming to grips with what's now a $1 trillion healthcare problem. That's the total cost they estimate for 1993. I want to open this up, since I'm not going to be here this afternoon to be on the panel discussion. I wanted to allow for some time to engage in a question and answer dialogue. I know some of you here are very familiar with the issue regarding dietary supplements and the alternative medical issues. I'd like to open that up. I didn't bring a whole slew of materials to distribute to you. I just want to give you an 800 number that I invite you to call at your leisure, and that is the 800 number for the Nutritional Health Alliance, their update line, the Washington update line. That's 1-800-226-4642. 1-800-226-4642. And for those of you who want to get involved and get your patients involved in this particular issue, what you can get is what we have, a notebook of our guide for Campaign 93. It contains all the information that you need, historically, what's going on now. We have a fax update service for those of you who want to get regular updates as to what's going on in Washington. When you become a member, you can get your fax number included on our fax service, and you'll get updates. And you can post them in your office or let your patients know. And it's really an effective way to communicate what's going on. One other thing that was most recent news in this area was yesterday, a press conference was held in the Capitol with Senator Hatch and Congressman Bill Richardson, the principal sponsors of the legislation. The bill numbers, for those of you, the House bill number is H.R. 1709, and the Senate bill is S784. And just again, as I said, what that legislation does is allow people to get health information about the products that they are buying, because currently the FDA has been holding the standards to allow health claim information to that which is applied to drugs. And to get something, a drug approved in this country, it takes at least over 10 years and can cost hundreds of millions of dollars. And the reason why these products can't stand up to that scrutiny is because they're not patentable, and no one's going to make that kind of investment. In addition, since they are derived directly from nature, they are nature's legacy to life, to sustain life. I think what people need to know is how they can safely use them, and what are the potential benefits, and what are their proper places in an overall approach to good health care, meaning a healthy lifestyle, diet, supplementation where needed, and regular visits with your doctor or your dentist or whatever, with your health professionals. And that's really one of the strongest points of the legislation, in addition to establishing an office for research at the National Institutes of Health, as well as mandating quality assurance of the products, so that way what people buy is bioavailable, high quality, and that just people are getting the best that's available to them. So I want to open up the floor to some discussion and questions, and I really invite you. Gentleman in the back there had it.
Mr. Martinez, my question requires a few sentences of background. Will you go through just a moment?
Sure.
In January of this year, the Public Health Service released a document detailing 25 months of investigation on melanoma. It was put out on the auspices of the Public Health Service, headed by Dr. James O. Mason. The committee was called CSER, which is Committee to Coordinate Health-Related Programs. The scientific information was contradictory to the use of amalgam, but the press release issued by Dr. Mason of the Public Health Service was a whitewash of that amalgam. Within 8 weeks after the release of that document, Dr. Mason was replaced at PHS, no longer there. Do you view this as a positive sign, and do you see any significance in his replacement? And I think there may be some people in the audience who do not understand that under the PHS comes the Food and Drug Administration and National Institutes of Health.
Well, I'm not familiar in detail. This is news to me in this area. I would just say to you, if you smell something smells fishy to you, you need to bring it to the attention of members of Congress. The two principal committees that you want to be dealing with in Congress are the House Energy and Commerce Committee, particularly the Subcommittee on Health and the Environment, which is chaired by Congressman Henry Waxman of California, and the Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee in the Senate, which is chaired by Senator Kennedy of Massachusetts.
What was the second one?
The Senate Labor and Human Resources Committee, which is chaired by Senator Kennedy. And don't assume that, I mean, what you really need to be doing, ideally, is you would like to speak with the chairman. You want to deal with the chairman. But if not, you want to get one of the members on that panel to take a particular interest in the concern that you have. And you do that by lobbying them, by educating them, by providing the staff with written material, making yourself available to testify at hearings, and even if need be, you know, at some point urge Congress to hold hearings on the issue. And at the very least, again, I think the strongest point that you have going, that we have going in this area, is we just want to give patients the information and let them make a choice about it.
Perhaps.
Yes, ma'am.
I missed a little bit of, if you can go back to the House Energy Commerce Committee.
There's the Subcommittee on Health and the Environment that's within the jurisdiction of the Energy and Commerce Committee.
On health and the environment.
Yes.
Who's the chairperson?
Chairperson of the subcommittee is Waxman. The chairman of the full committee is John Dingell of Michigan.
Perhaps I didn't make my question clear, perhaps we prefer not to answer it. Do you view the replacement of Dr. James O. Masi of PHS as a positive sign?
I really can't, again, I'm not really familiar with the details of that case, but I would say to you or to anyone who has concerns about that or suspects something, you bring that to the attention of a member of Congress, and I mean, they get interested, they'll ask questions, they'll investigate, why did this happen, why did this take place, what motivated this to take place. Yes?
I'd like to ask a question of the questioner. I'm interested too in the career of Dr. Mason. Do you view his replacement as a promotion for him or a reversal of his?
Where did he go?
Where did he go?
He's certainly not head of PHS anymore. That's Assistant Secretary of Health.
Yeah.
And the only places above that are the Secretary of Health and Human Services herself, Dr. Donna Shalala, or the President of the United States, or his wife, one of the.
Yeah.
So I really can't say that I view it as a promotion for him. I view it personally as a very positive sign, whether or not it was connected with CSER document, because underneath him comes a chap by the name of Kessler, is that his name? Dr. Mason was his boss. And of course, the word out was that former President Bush would like to have seen Kessler replace Dr. Kessler, and also President Clinton would like to see replaced him, yet he wasn't replaced. And obviously, somewhere along the line, there was someone who was helping Commissioner Kessler, and it could very well have been Dr. Mason.
With regards to Dr. Kessler's retention as FDA commissioner, it still remains to be seen whether he will, last through this. I've gotten conflicting information from congressional staff and even people within the White House as to whether Dr. Kessler would be replaced or retained. So it remains to be seen. It doesn't have to be reconfirmed because the way he was retained exempted or prevents him from having to go before a confirmation panel, a Senate confirmation panel. There was a gentleman who, yes.
One of my teachers from Greece mentioned that someone asked him about taking supplements. He asked because the soul of the food has been taken out of the food. And that's where the word soul food comes from.
Thank you.
Raise your own food.
That gentleman there at the bus, I'm going to get to you.
What is happening on the recommendation from Ms. Rodham on alternative health care and impacting the different?
Okay, last month I was...
Repeat the question, please.
His question was, what do we anticipate with regards to alternative health care within the context of the President Clinton's health care reform proposals? Last month I was at a meeting at the White House with a group, a delegation of people from the alternative healthcare community. It was an opportunity to both educate several of the members of the task force that were there and also hear from them how the process worked. It still remains to be seen exactly what will come out of these task force recommendations. But what I am sure of is that if they investigated some of the alternative healthcare proposals, I think the administration will find some real areas for cost savings and improved on what I would call quality of life for patients or people who are accessing health care. And I'm sure it's only a matter of time before more of these modalities become incorporated. I think the mainstream or the orthodox has been having to confront the shortcomings of the present system and having to admit and look at that there are some alternatives out there and then that can actually work, and the challenge then becomes is how to incorporate that in the system in a way that works for everybody. So it remains to be seen. I can't, we just had that one meeting with the people from the task force, so it really remains to be seen what will come from that. And you're
Tony, can I interrupt 1 second?
Yeah.
If we could get the speakers to come up to the standing mic, that way we can get the questions and answers on the tape would help. Okay, great, thanks.
If you're for alternatives to healthcare, obviously against forced fluoridation, and I was wondering in this regards to this committee if there's any move afoot to slip into these proposals, national fluoridation.
Well, this is where having lobbyists and being organized politically allows you that opportunity to have people monitoring what's going on and seeing opportunities for them, and also having some several members of Congress who are actually sympathetic and supportive of the issue, who will actually be willing to introduce an amendment or introduce a piece of legislation. This is why I want to urge all of you, when you go back home, you make it a point to introduce yourself to your congressmen and your senators, and you offer your services and expertise and advice to his staff and to the members themselves, so that way they become more familiar and educated about your particular issue. That's how it's done. And then it gets a little more sophisticated by when you have someone who is sympathetic and supportive of your cause, you do everything you can to make sure that that individual gets supported in their election efforts. It's just a reality. Politics costs money and also requires getting the voters educated and excited and empowered to actually go to the polls. And that's what's really exciting when you have a legislative proposal that you can go to your constituency, both professionally and to your patients, and say, here's a proposal that's actually going to work for you and me, and it's actually going to do a lot of good for us, but we need everybody to be participating, from the most basic way, which is writing a letter to your member of Congress, to taking it all the way to attending town meetings and volunteering your expertise to his or her offices, those kinds of things. Anyone else? Yes?
Yes, may I share our bibliophile, and does the Alliance have bibliographic information available, for example, documentation of the insufficiency of the American diet, for example?
Yes, we are. One of the things that we try to provide in this notebook, for example, is a section on articles, and we encourage, we send them to our members, and in addition, we urge people to, when they see articles or anything of any literature that is helpful, to use that, because it becomes really your source to educate congressional members and their staffs. You know, we expect later on this summer that there will be congressional hearings on this subject, and I'm sure all the scientific people will be there, and you know, the information is going to be presented that, you know, there is absolute good evidence out there to support that supplementation of certain nutrients, like for example antioxidants, can reduce risk factors associated with the onset of cancer. And you know, people should have that information. They should not have to get it anecdotally from a friend or a relative or from someone they don't know, or have to always resort to magazines or textbooks. They ought to be able to have that information right on a label, provided that that information is communicated in a truthful, non-misleading, and in a responsible way. I don't think anyone from our dealings with people in the dietary supplement industry are advocating that they can put a claim on the label to substitute the other factors that go with good health, which is diet, lifestyle, and seeing your health professional on a regular basis. So, yes?
Amazing as it may seem, attention and concern for the biocompatibility of dental materials has to be viewed as out of the mainstream of the establishment in dentistry, which puts us in your company, along with many others in the area of alternative medicine. My question is, do you as a lobbyist see any hopeful signs within the United States Congress that our position is strengthened, or that there is hope to make inroads into the governmental and establishment positions on these areas?
From my experience of dealing with this, and this is more of a psychological thing that I've noticed, if you go out and go with the approach that you're going to make someone or some organization wrong, all the defenses come up, and then you are attacked for you know, making an alternative, stating an alternative opinion that is different from what's commonly accepted from the mainstream. What I find what works is promoting your alternative and promoting the benefits, and not focusing always directly on the negative, because that's really what, you know, the problem with all alternative health care. They're probably calling some of you quacks and irresponsible and so forth. But really what will work more effectively for you is to say, hey, here's something that is actually beneficial to people and actually works more effectively, be it, and economics should be also incorporated. In whatever scientific research that you're doing, always incorporate an economic component to it, because the regulators are definitely moved by economic information, especially when government is taking more and more the role of being the regulator and supplier of health care.
I'm sorry, Mr. Martinez, but we in the IAOMT do definitely take a positive approach. That it wasn't my question at all. We understand that you don't wave red flags at them, all you do is get opposition. We take a positive approach for sure. My question was, are there hopeful signs in Congress that we are making inroads?
Yes. I mean, the fact that we've got an Office of Alternative Medicine at NIH, the fact that you've got legislative action going on in several of these areas, and I mean, we look at the dietary supplement issue as being right on the front line, because it's something that, you know, impacts, we say, there's 100 million regular users of dietary supplements in this country. We did a Yanklevich survey, a poll, and that's a pretty significant number. So yes, I am hopeful. People want more information, and I think the whole attitude in this country has shifted to people want greater information, people want to be able to make choices, and people want a greater role, want to be in partnership with the people that are providing their health care, not just at the effect of who's ever providing it to them.
My name is Carol Ward, and I'm chairperson for the Southeastern Pennsylvania Dams chapter. And I'm interested in you speaking about contacting our representatives. And I think all of us in dams know what a challenge that is. In my own case, I've been trying for 2 years to get the state rep in my district to come to one of the dams meetings. I've called her, it's very difficult, she doesn't come. And I'm also trying to contact the chairperson of the Health and Welfare Committee in Harrisburg so that we can see him, and the letters are not responded to, and I've even tried having her contact him and so on. I think we need a lot more television coverage of dental amalgam situation of problems. I finally, after 13 months, got suburban cable, channel 31 in the suburban area of Philadelphia to show Second Thoughts. And I think more people have been contacting our alternative dentists since then. But it's still going to have to be a lot of grassroots work to get this into the attention of the public.
Believe me, you need to flood that legislator with a lot of letters, hundreds of letters, and assertive, positive letters. That way, the legislator will understand that, hey, this is important to my community, and if I want to have a political future, I better start paying attention to it. I mean, that's really the essence of the point you want to get across. And also, again, hey, this is something that is beneficial and can actually be very positive. I mean, every politician I've met is always looking for a way to look good. So, yes.
I'm Jim Masi. I just wanted to make an overview as to how other organizations, scientific organizations that are involved in the electrical, the mechanical, the chemical aspects, go about doing just what you're saying. They have speakers bureaus that go to their local constituencies. At that time, the invitations are put out to the local congressmen, senators, etc. The local people are made converts. The issue doesn't necessarily become as high a barrier to scale because the people who are the local constituencies will say, we're already doing this. We've heard this. We're educated on this. If you can get the people on the local level, national level is very hard to overcome. You can't break mainstream. You have to go local. We have to go to
starts, yes.
places. Speakers bureaus are a very good way of doing that.
Yes, you should organize that, should be part of whatever legislative committee that you all organize for yourself, legislative initiatives committee. Yes, anyone else? Well, about 5 more minutes, but yes.
Is there any conflict between Dingle and Waxman? I've heard there is.
Not to my knowledge. They work well together. I think they respect each other. Congressman Dingle is one of the most respected, regarded, and I will also say feared members of Congress because he has a very long memory for those people who have opposed him in the past. This is a man you absolutely want to be your friend and not your enemy.
2 years ago, I contacted Claudia Bevel, who's his staff person on the oversight committee for FDA, on this issue, on the mercury issue. And I asked Murray Mimi, Dave Kennedy, Dave Eggleston to send her scientific information, which they did at volume. The only thing that I know that came out of that was Dingle had a staff meeting with the FDA on what to do about all these quack dentists who are taking films out of people's mouths.
Well, I think in addition to the scientific information that you present, I don't know what happened at that meeting. Of course, I was not there. But the other thing that you want to do that's also persuasive is you get people who have been adversely affected by mercury amalgams, and you bring them to the member and say, gee, why aren't you looking at this? You know, this is something that, affects everybody in this country, requires dental care, and if there are some risks associated with the use of mercury amalgams, well, by golly, we have a duty to give people that information. So, persistence. You're going to always encounter that kind of thinking. You've just got to persevere and persist, and eventually your point will get across. Yes, Howard.
Do you have any ideas or recommendations of how one can get one's congressman's attention? I have been trying for weeks to reach my congressman's legislative health aide, who is never in the office and also does not return my calls.
Okay. If you feel that you are not getting adequate constituent service from your congressman, then you need to Every congressman has an administrative assistant who manages the office, and you could just bring it to the attention of the administrative assistant that, hey, I've written letters, I've called, I don't get answers, what's going on? And that's one way in-house you can do it. The other way is to get strength in numbers. Get more people to join you, to write, to call. Eventually, they will respond. They have to.
What about contacting local representatives?
Yeah, I think, this is something the professions are regulated individually by each state. There are some, of course, national issues that affect you all, but you need to be doing this on a state level and organizing this, because licensure and standards and those kinds of things are in the domains of the individual states.
What I meant, though, it's hard to get a hold of the LA and the AA sometimes in Washington, but there's always a local representative.
Sure.
Congressman there in your hometown, just go.
You can even, in some of these offices, just walk in and make an appointment. Find out when the member is going to be home, so you can get an appointment. You get a group together. Get patients with the dentist, and you go in and you educate them. You tell them your side of the story or what you would like to see happen. Okay, I thank you all very much for this opportunity. I wish you a successful conference, and I'm here, Rich, and anytime I can be of any assistance, I'm here to help. Thank you.
Happy baby.
You just $25 contribution. You'll get the book. You give your fax number. You're on our fax network. It's pretty reasonable.
Where's the application?
When you call the 800 number, you'll be given the address, either mail in, or you can even leave a message right on it. And there's other numbers if you don't have all your questions answered, then you'll get another phone number to call to actually speak to a live person.
Thanks again, Tony. Good, happy baby. Our next speaker is one of our own members, Dr. James Masi. Jim has a BS in physics from Fairfield University, and a master's in physics from Long Island University, and got his PhD in material science from the University of Delaware. He has over 33 years experience in industry and academia. His research has covered a wide variety of areas, including semiconductors, luminescence, liquid crystals, dental materials, corrosions, and electrical effects in the oral cavity. He's a professor of engineering and bioengineering at Western New England College. He holds over 70 patents and has authored over 120 scientific articles and papers, published a couple of books, and he's a consultant to a number of companies. He's one of our smart members and one of our nicest gentlemen members. I'd like to introduce Dr. James Masi.
My mother told you to say that, Richard.
She did, she did.
Easy for you to say. Get all the gold for I'm coming across.
Go ahead.
Yes, I will. I'll be going back and forth to it. That's what I want to say. That'll be fine. Let's see. We don't block that. I think we're going to have to lower the lights a bit, please. If someone has control. We're going to be looking at minimizing heavy metal ion production in the oral cavity. And by the way, unlike Tony, who is very fortunate at this point to be looking forward to the birth of a child, we've had 6, and I hope we're not going to have any more. Looking at the minimization of heavy metal ion production in the oral cavity. Minimization. I think we know how to stop it, but minimization. Unlike the creatures who swim the waters, otherwise known as sharks, we're not given second chance on our teeth, outside of our baby teeth coming through into our adult teeth. Some unusual cases have given us extra teeth to work with, but this is not the common mode of operation. They do get lesions, but you can't find a dentist to make a house call with a shark for obvious reasons. They have lesions just like we do. When the lesions get bad, the teeth fall out and another one comes forward to replace it. We are not quite that lucky. This says, from the wisdom of Larson, of course, crooked teeth. That's right, pal, you just give us your gold fillings and nobody gets hurt. There's a lot of wisdom in that. The amalgam that we were all yelling about gets exacerbated in its function in the presence of noble metals. I've spoken on this before, and we've done a lot of experimentation on it. But a simple cartoon says it all. Give us your gold fillings and nobody gets hurt. Well, it's not quite that simple. So we'll go in and we'll qualify some of the levels associated with this. If I may, just briefly, let's just see where we are. There we go. It seems as though we can go in and prohibit mercury in paint even when it's quote-unquote tied up in a compound. It's tied up in a compound, quote unquote. It is a good bactericide, but there are other alternatives. And the EPA well accepts this and says there are now other alternatives to bactericides. Mercury amalgam is very strong, but there are other alternatives. Excuse the multimedia, but it's the way we go today. What's down below isn't quite as important as what's up on top. Mercury vapor release and TKN method. The TKN method basically is a standards method for determination. It's the total kcal nitrogen method. In the process of doing this, we have open mercury electrodes. And even in certain cases, amalgam electrodes, amalgamated silver with mercury so that it isn't liquid. It's been banned by the American Chemical Society. Seems to be obvious. On the other hand, the ADA challenges an EPA metals test of total recoverable metals, considering that the disposal of amalgams is in violation of EPA standards. Why then is it so unobvious that we can put them in temporary storage in a person's mouth? Misconception number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we'll go through them one at a time. This is a phase diagram. Give you a quiz on it in about 5 minutes. Just sort of commit it to memory and we'll be all set. Silver, mercury, tin. I won't go into putting the copper in there, and then that becomes a quaternary. This is a turnaround and it's confusing enough. Misconception number one. We form these alloys in an amalgam at room temperature. We form these alloys, which everyone claims are fully formed alloys in the amalgam, only by coming from temperatures of 962 and above. 962 degrees centigrade and above, down. That's called equilibrium. Therefore, fact number one, the amalgam is a metastable, non-equilibrium metallic compound. It is mechanically put together and at best, is somewheres in the vicinity of these compounds, but at worst, leaves so much free mercury you wouldn't believe. Fact number one, a phase diagram that is always put in front of you as the compositional truth associated with amalgams refers to coming from a temperature at the top and coming down, not starting down here. Amalgamation is not an alloying process. Yes, we do have a number of different things that get put into our mouths. A great number of people have looked at the acidity associated with various mouthwashes. And what do? We swish it around in our mouth and leave it there because it tastes so good. Well, that's not too bad. I guess it tastes good, but it's doing little things behind the scenes. We take an orange juice and don't follow it down with any other chaser, and the orange juice feels so good while it gets into our teeth. So we're not doing things that are too terrific. We're putting environments in there. Fortunately, the buffering of our saliva does help in the meantime. But we're putting things in our mouths that need to be taken care of, that need to be wiped away. And sometimes they're not. These acidogenic or acid-type environments are nonetheless breeding areas for bacteria, which we call in the ultimate plaque. Pfeiffer decided that he was going to list everything from cranberry juice up to mother's milk with varying pHs. If you will note, there are some things that don't need to be translated, but they are quite acidic. Coca-Cola, I guess, is the same in all languages. I noticed on a Russian sign on channel, the PBS channel, they were showing the Americanization of certain of the areas. McDonald's and Coca-Cola come across without translation. Notice the pH. We're sitting down in the 3s. Cranberry juice tastes very good. It makes you pucker for a reason. It is an environment in which ions can be transferred. How much? Approximately 9 to 1 over the environment of your normal saliva. 9 to 1. Mercury gets dumped into your system in the presence of cranberry juice. Does calcium get dumped into your system from your tooth? Eventually, but a lot slower. Does phosphorus? Eventually, but a lot slower. Do the compositions associated with the acrylic, bis-GMA, and a variety of other composites go into your system? Yes, but a lot slower. And these are not toxic byproducts that come into your system from the composites. In looking at the mouth, we have to do what we do everywhere else within the body.
Orthopedists have done it. You could no more tell an orthopedic man to put an amalgam plug in an excised osteoporotic region in order to fill the gap and make it strong. You could no more tell him to do that without possibly getting a swing from the mallet with which he drives home his prosthesis. He would tell you, "Are you crazy?" We have biomechanical, biochemical, bioelectrical. We have potential differences between materials that we have in the mouth, if they are metallic. We have potential differences between saliva and your bone fluids. These are natural potential differences which allow for the normal flow of ions within the mouth and allow for the sensory action of buffering within the mouth. We have saliva, fortunately, that is a buffer within the mouth and helps us a great deal. But very much like the environment itself of our own earth, has limited tolerance. We have the biomechanical things which all of the orthodontists speak to and the orthopedic people speak to. But when it comes to teeth, we say, as long as it doesn't hurt, do it. You've seen this before. Basically, it is an electrochemical chart that says in saliva we have from the most corroded, I have a laser pointer. I just going to use it. There we go. Talk to you a little bit about lasers and what we're talking about later. From the least corroded to the most corroded. Least corroded up here, and we'd have to go a little bit higher in order to see things, but mercury and silver sit here, and that mercury-silver gamma compound sits below or is more corrodable than your type 316 stainless, which you have as your appliance in the mouth. Then a variety of other alloys, and if you look back here, I don't know if there's any way we can bring this back so it'll all fit on there, but I didn't realize. There we go. Thank you. If we look back here, we have things like gold, platinum and gold sit up here, titanium here, and the 316 stainless, all of which corrode mercury products, silver products. I don't think I hit this. Let me go back one. Is there a reverse here somewhere? There we go. That's okay. All of which corrode this mercury-silver alloy. Remember, things that we put in the mouth have potential differences. If they have a potential difference, they have the driving force to move ions. If they have the driving force to move ions, the only place for them to go is into the saliva. I am not a medical person. I am not even a dentist, as I've told you before. I am, however, a material scientist, and I can tell you for sure that this is getting into your system. Unless you spit every 2 minutes and remove the environment, it is going down and into your stomach. To refresh you on the reaction, the mercury plus the silver tin in the first type of reaction gives you a silver tin alloy, a mercury silver alloy, and a silver mercury alloy. This gamma 2 is very, very corrodable. However, this is very, very volatile. It gives off vapors. And I will show you about this in a moment. There are things that we have to look at here. Our decomposition in the amalgam chemistry is very specific. As a matter of fact, it does not just happen like the mixture of sodium and chlorine at high temperatures to form sodium chloride. It doesn't just happen. There is diffusion that has to happen. If we take a drop of ink and put it in the middle of water while I am speaking here, it will take about 5 minutes to make that water uniformly blue. Why? It takes time for that ink to diffuse in the water. In a system that is getting continually harder and less susceptible to diffusion, the system of the amalgam gives a very non-uniform chemical reaction. I don't care what anyone says. It's very non-uniform, and we've looked at it under the scanning electron microscope. Different compositions in different areas of the amalgam. Here's the complete reaction where we put copper in now. We remove that gamma-2 alloy, which is very, very, I'll try to move this, I'm sorry. Which is very, very corrosive, corrodable, and replace it with a large amount of this gamma-1, which is less corrodable but more volatile. So to speak, choose your poison. The different phases, as we look at them now. Silver tin phase, 8416, which is called the beta. 84% silver, atomic percent, 16% tin. The gamma, silver tin, 7426. The alpha, over a range of silver tin. Why is it over a range? Because the alpha phase of this material happens over a range in that phase diagram. We'll give the benefit of the doubt right now that this phase diagram compositional regime is really true, though it isn't, as I told you before. The gamma-1, silver mercury, 40 silver, 60 mercury. That tells you something. That's the one that's stable. Gamma-2, which we try to eliminate with the high copper alloys. The eta, which is a copper tin, and the epsilon, which is a copper tin. Lesser phases, a little bit harder to form, but nonetheless present. If we look at these phases with respect to their driving potential, and we have to remember that the potential of this part with respect to this part says that this is non-corrodable, this is corrodable. In between, everything that is below another can be corroded by that one above it. These can be corroded by this. All of these below gold can be corroded by the presence of gold. It tells you something, doesn't it? What's the procedure for putting a gold inlay over the top of mercury, which I understand is still present in about 50% of our dental offices in the United States? Just put it over the top, it'll be okay, it's covered, nobody can see it. This will corrode this, everything down below there. As sure as I'm standing here, and as sure as I have 33 years experience in materials, these will corrode. It isn't, well, we haven't seen anything like that before. They will corrode, folks. My juniors in college look at mercury in the mouth and say, that's stupid. These are 19 and 20-year-olds. Why do they see it so clearly? Because it is scientific fact. And when we replaced vested interests with scientific fact, we never get to see the full truth. It usually happens with much more disastrous effects. like the ripping of a shirt and weeping and gnashing of teeth. Just fell this time. Okay. Amalgam versus each of these has a potential which looks like this. All of these will corrode. Stainless steel 316, titanium, gold, will corrode the amalgam and dump mercury into the oral cavity. Will corrode, not may corrode, will corrode. Well, they have to be in contact. No, they don't. As long as there are electrolytes present, called saliva and bone fluids, we will indeed corrode. Fact number 2, they don't have to be in contact. These will corrode all of those, and these will corrode amalgam. This is an electron micrograph of the surface of an amalgam, freshly polished, put into the scanning electron microscope and looked at. Just the differences in color are from the various conductivities of the region. Here's your gamma phase, here's your epsilon phase, your eta phase, your silver copper. This is basically a gamma phase with some little bubbles on the top, which from freshly polished amalgams. And what do we do after we get our amalgams polished? Rub your tongue over it because it feels so good. Mercury. Free mercury. I told you that the amalgam was a metastable state. It is not a pure alloy as normally formed, so that if we put mechanical force on it, we will in turn squeeze excess mercury out of it, or squeeze mercury out from compositions that have not had a chance to diffuse throughout the whole structure. Remember, not a true alloy. Not a true alloy. Mercury. Free mercury. This is another scanning electron micrograph taken by a junior at our school. If I may, I would like to show you one particular facet, if I can find it. There we go. Which makes life interesting in the oral environment. It's not blotched, it's just that we have the overlay here. I just wanted to show you the evaporation. I just changed to the other slide intentionally because I'm going to turn this off and I'll show you what happens. The evaporation rate of mercury, 10 to the minus 7th grams, or a tenth of a microgram per cubic per square centimeter of surface area. Let's look at the phases that we have. Gamma 1 phase, that's the one we like to have there. Evaporation rate, 17 times higher than the beta or the alpha, or even the gamma 2, which is our corrodable medium. We got rid of this, but we replaced it with something that evaporates very readily. 17 times. Just the presence of gamma 1 at the surface says we're going to have mercury coming out of there, just like water out of a boiling pot. Not making this up. It's not an opinion. It's a fact. 1974, Reynolds. Journal of Biomedical Material Research.
Pretty warm.
Pardon?
Pretty warm for a mountain.
I'm sorry?
Pretty warm for a mountain.
Yes, it is.
Say with
It's
coffee,
higher.
would do that.
But the ratios are approximately the same at 35, at 33, at 32. As a matter of fact, our evaporation rate, if we go down to 32, you're going to have something that's in the range of 10, approximately. If you look at the activation energy, I think you're approximately at 10. So you're going to go, if you're 10 to 1 on this, you're going to be 10 to 1 there. This one doesn't change that much. Okay. It's not that it doesn't happen at the lower temperatures. It's just that here, the readings all go above the level where we can measure them. This is a backscatter image, and the image shows in the darker blue regions, around regions that have been previously etched back, the tubules where the collagen normally was. Phosphoric acid etch prior to the incorporation of the amalgam on the top surface, and the ferric oxalate, I guess, is what has been used in the past. Notice the heavy concentrations of mercury around the regions where the collagen was. We'll show you in a second that opening up these tubules in the process of applying an amalgam only serves to exacerbate the diffusion process. And we'll show you in which direction it happens, actually. Tolerance limits. Mercury vapor, 1/10 of a milligram per cubic meter. Organic mercury compounds, 100th of a milligram per cubic meter. No established limits for fluids or solids. Why? Why can't we take saliva samples and do the same thing? Why haven't we done it? Isn't it important? As far as I'm concerned, if I keep my mouth open, which my wife will tell you I normally do, a lot of the mercury goes out. A great deal of it goes into my saliva, and that goes into my system. How well I get rid of it really tells me how much of it I retain. The state of Massachusetts, by the way, won't let you dispose of this except through a company that does recycling. Throw it into landfill areas like other metals, and you get a fine slapped on you in the state of Massachusetts.
Could I ask you something about that last slide, please?
Sure.
What testing, what would that mass spec you did that with?
Atomic absorption.
Yes, sir. And I noticed you get 0.01 milligram per cubic meter on organic,
Yep.
and you get 0.1 milligram per cubic meter on mercury vapor.
Yes.
Is this you consider pretty common, or how many tests? Is this
Is that a standard limit from the government standard that you
It's a
got?
government standard. That is your standard at present that is set up with the agreement of not only the ADA, but also occupational limits, which OSHA has set up. CFR 1910, I think it is. Code of Federal Regulations 1910.
This is what they call a TLV, more or less.
Yes.
This is a TLV set up by the government.
Yes, it is.
Okay, are these tests you actually ran, or is it just?
No. These aren't the tests. These are the limits. These are the tolerance
Okay.
limits.
Thank
I'll
you.
show you the tests that I've run.
Okay.
All amalgams are not created equal. If we take a look at amalgams that were made by the same dentist, not from the same lots, and we just do a mercury scan on them, we can obviously see that the mercury present in each of these at the surface, 1 micron down, 10 to the minus 6 meters in depth, is different. Why? Well, it's not the dentist's fault. That's the way it happens to go when you make something that is metastable. I had these pressed by a guy who has 38 years of experience of doing this. A very good dentist, in my opinion, a good researcher. And he said, gee, I thought I was more consistent than that. He's quite consistent. It's just that the admixture of the amalgamation process doesn't come out uniform every time. Statistically, it's one of the hardest systems to predict, the amalgamation process.
Jim, what do the various intensities mean here?
Various intensities mean that you have more mercury in this than you have in this. This one has striae in it, if you can look at it. The striae, the reason I did it in the polar blue was to bring out the little striae and the white portions to show that the regions around here are really different with regard to their mercury concentration. The darker blue is heavy mercury. So you have heavier mercury here, as with the backscatter image that I had on the tube itself. You have heavier mercury here, here, lighter regions in these regions, lighter regions here.
You're talking about heavy free mercury?
Heavy mercury, whether it's bound into a compound or free, all that the X-ray imaging on the backscatter detects is the presence of mercury, whether bound or unbound.
So then basically the amalgams have different compositions of mercury?
In different regions, yes. Varying by as much as 15%.
Now could this all be from the same amalgam?
All from the same type amalgam.
I mean, could it be all from the same tooth? Did you just take different levels and could see something this different?
I'll show you that in the same tube and show you how the distribution looks. It's quite interesting. As a matter of fact, if I go back a few slides and show you the previous...
Jim, were these hand mixed or these the
No.
capsules?
These were capsule mixed. They were pre-mixed alloys, prior alloys to the addition of the mercury, brake capsules, and done according to Cibron and a variety of other people's specifications. We've done this with a number of alloys. It's not just one manufacturer. It's a number of different alloys. If you look here, it looks to be fairly uniform. However, let's look what has happened on the surface of this. This and these phases are not uniformly distributed, nor are the intensities associated with the mercury presence. These pits are missing mercury. They have everything there for the amalgam but the mercury. Where did it go? Was this done in the polishing? This is on the surface of a tube after extraction. No polishing, no nothing. 250 times. Is it uniform? I wouldn't call that uniform. When I see an alloy, it's relatively uniform. You have spatial uniformity up to 1,000 times, and you can see the pattern that's there and the regular spacing. This is not uniformity in my opinion. Nor is the missing mercury a sign that nothing's going on in the mouth. So how do we do it? Electrochemically, there's a lot of apparatus that's available. It's potentiostatic or potentiodynamic types of measurements that are made. These potentiodynamic measurements are made on alloys of various types. The alloys which are of great interest to us show us that titanium alloy because of the rapid formation of the oxygen, dental gold, cobalt chrome, 316 stainless, all corrode amalgam. Base metal substrates are corroded by these also. Nickel flows into your system when you have base metal anywhere in there. Nickel is not a good actor, not by any means. Bob McMahon and I did a study on an actual clustering in the nasal cavity on some mercury that had caused the beginnings of a tumor. Nickel is not a fine little beast to have in the body. Nickel, around the nickel.
What do you say when you say base metal?
Base metals which contain cobalt, chromium, nickel, copper, a variety of different base metals. It's called base metal only because people have enough of a latitude to be able to specify what that base metal is from different manufacturers. It varies all over the lot, though, unfortunately. Stripping potentiometric techniques will bring us down to 1 part per billion. 1 part per billion. 1 part in a billion. 1 part of mercury in a billion. This is the type of apparatus that we have. The deposition occurs like this. Mercury goes to a free ion and forms an insoluble film. This is an awful lot like the Gerald apparatus. If you've ever seen the gold film Gerald apparatus, it works on a similar process where you're displacing mercury. This is called cathodic stripping voltammetry, where you do a voltage versus current type of curve. This is the procedure. These are the limits. The apparatus says that we are going to have a peak potential of around 0.4 of a volt. That's mercury. Very well defined quantitative methods for doing it. These methods don't lie. You do them 10 or 12 times to get an average. They're very good. They're within about 5% of one another if you do them one after another. These are the types of curves you get off, and very accurately, I would say you can measure down to about 5 parts per million without taking the extra stripping type of techniques that I showed you to bring you to 1 part per billion. So very inexpensively, these things can be measured. Here's the Gerald apparatus, the gold film mercury analyzer. Works very, very well. Thanks to Dave Reggiani, we've been doing it as a backup to try and measure various instruments as a means of making things visible in the dentist's office. These are fairly expensive instruments now. Microelectrodes are coming along. Microelectrodes which themselves can detect in the saliva, actively in the mouth, the presence of mercury. Microelectrodes Incorporated is one of the companies that is working very, very strongly to make a mercury electrode that no one will dispute. This is difficult to do. This is basically an oral potentiometer. Pertec is one of the manufacturers, and voltage, current, and the actual energy transferred, or the number of ions per second from the current, tells you the presence of difference in potential in the mouth. This is a first diagnostic, and I recommend it highly as a first diagnostic to tell you if there's a problem there to begin with. Ion transport calculations are relatively simple. It's algebra, and we can see that we get of the order of 0.024 cubic centimeters of mercury per year when it's in the presence of a gold alloy. Life of mercury amalgams in the presence of gold alloys lasts for only a short period of time relative to mercury being present in the mouth by itself, the amalgams being present in the mouth by itself. I'm not speaking of how much is dumped into your system in the process, but it is corrodable. We did some tests, and I'm going to show you a video in a second to show you what this actually means. Mercury by itself, the amalgams, are corrodable. The blue areas show you that it is corroding in and of itself in the presence of a saline solution. Mercury on gold is corroding like crazy. Mercury on titanium is blue and is corroding like the dickens. mercury, however, next to aluminum corrodes the aluminum. Just what we should see. Can we put on, please, the, just shut off the slide projector and put on the video? If you might, please. I've run a little tutorial, and I'll be glad to transfer that to anyone who would like it. Make up a tape for you if you want to show or look at it yourself. Just press start, and I think that'll do it. Should have some volume to it.
The audio's not hooked up on there.
Yeah, audio's not up, and it doesn't appear that it's bright enough either. Okay, let me explain to you what's happening here. Basically, we have agar gel, phenolphthalein, and potassium ferrocyanide. The blue areas are the corrodable areas. These are what are called cathodes. These are anodes. We have zinc on this side. We have the steel here. Basically, the steel, with respect to other things, can be corroded. Okay, so we have to coat them with zinc. It's called galvanizing. We can do the same thing in a time lapse and watch how it develops. This gel then forms a permanent record, which you can take a picture of where the anodes and where the cathodes are. Taking a look at this, we can actually see what coatings will form anodes, what coatings will form cathodes. If we in turn coat a portion of it with copper, the copper now becomes cathodic with respect to the steel. We coat things with copper in order to try to protect them. Get on to the next. Now, an interesting portion of corrodability says that if we have a normal nail, and I did it with a nail because it's big enough, I couldn't zoom in closely enough. It says that we have an anode, or a non-corrodable portion here, and where we have been stressed or worked or pressed or moved or bent, like on the head and on the tip of the shank, these are corrodable with respect to other portions of that nail. The nail is self-corroding on the tip and the head. Oh, you didn't realize that? Have you ever seen a Chevy Vega where they cold bent the fenders? You may not see a Chevy Vega with fenders on it, by the way. Okay, so we have this process that goes on, and of course there are cathodic methods that we can put potentials on it to make things not corrode. Very simply, to make things not corrode. But we can't put potentials in the mouth. And if we make things not corrode, the things that we put in there to prevent it from corroding, like we do in oil wells, dump ions themselves into the environment. Okay, you can stop it, please. Yes?
Is that analogous to the aluminum rod we have in our hot water tanks?
Yes, it is. It's also analogous to the zinc rod that you have next to a drilling apparatus in Texas, Texas Gulf. You can't really stick those all over the mouth because you're going to dump aluminum into the system. And that's very pretty. There we go. Can we shut up the top part here? Thank you. Valve and release. We look at Compacil, Contour, or SDI, which is a Southern Dental. Compacil is an interesting material. It's tin and copper free. It's just mercury and silver. And they claimed, of course, that this didn't release anything. This is averaged over a 4-week period in distilled water. First week after fabrication, first day after fabrication. This one really stays up there high for the number of micrograms per square centimeter for 24 hours. Contour starts to taper off, and so does Southern Dental. This is without disturbance of the surface, no pressure, no mechanical force. Corrosion, what does it look like? We have the blackening in regions, we have loss of gamma-2, non-gamma-2 amalgams, With gold present, we have up to 250 micrograms per square centimeter per day. Part of this work came from Jaroslav's work that he had done. Part of it came from our confirmation of his work. So, the electrochemical corrosion process does proceed with metal ions going off, electrons being transferred through the metal, and the water taking up whatever we need for the ionic process. If we can just dim the system there for just a second. Thanks, Ron. These are electron photomicrographs of, I'll point to them here because it's very important that you see what's happening. This is a tooth on its side. These are the restorations. A gold filling was adjacent to it but not touching. This is a diffused area where there was no mercury implanted, which has diffused through the dental tubules in the direction of the gold filling. In the direction of the gold filling through the tooth. This is not maybe or possible. It is.
That's the same tooth.
Pardon?
That's the same tooth or neighboring. Gold is on the same
Gold
tooth.
is in a neighboring tooth, but not touching. Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Reasons. Well, when we put the mercury in, we do crush some of the areas around. Even though we do coat them with ferric oxalates and a variety of other types of materials for sealants, bingo, in and through it goes. And if we look after having put in the electron microscope a bit of mechanical pressure on the region of the amalgam, this is putting pressure with a stylus, a very small stylus, equivalent to chewing gum. This is free mercury. It's free mercury. There isn't a question about it. It isn't possible. It is. Okay. You can put up the slide projector, please. This is a tooth that was put in backwards by a dentist. If we can look without changing it, don't worry about it, Murray. Thanks. We have an amalgam up here. We have a titanium post. From the bottom to the top, our conduction path says, corrode the living daylights out of the top of this. They are definitely in contact. You have seen it before. You have seen crowns that are put on. You have seen implants that are made. You have seen endodontic studs that are put in there that actually do this to a tooth. The corrosion process does occur. This is another tooth that was put in by the same dentist. By the way, I just had thought about something on the way down here. That DAM might stand for Mothers Against Dyslexia. I can only say that because I have a son that has worked his way through that. Gold in contact with an amalgam. This is gold crown, titanium, a mess. If this doesn't get it, that will. And does it corrode? You bet it does. Fiercely, 280 micrograms per square centimeter for 24 hours. Gold and titanium are untouched. Gold and titanium have minimal transfer, but the titanium itself is slightly corroded. Depends on the oxide coating on it, Dave. Slightly corroded by the gold, but only slightly. Titanium isn't great for your system either, but you know, talk about limits.
Well, what do you mean 280 micrograms per centimeter per day for 24 hours. I need a layman's explanation of that.
Okay, of mercury that you have in your mouth, when they put the filling in, we probably have of the order of 1.5 grams to 2 grams. This is of the order of 10 to the minus 4th down, or 1/10,000 of that. They really deteriorate quite fast. How else can we get these anodes and cathodes? We protect certain areas. Plaque builds up. We now have an oxygen-starved reaction. Well, stainless steel is stainless steel, too. That won't happen. It only happens with amalgams. It only happens with things that are done for cervical erosion, things that are done on occlusal surfaces, things that are done in the pits also happen. If I can put the video on very quickly and fast forward it to the point where I put a rubber band around a piece of 316 stainless, I think we're going to see something that's sort of interesting. We're going to have to fast forward on this. A little bit of fast forward if you can. Thank you. Okay, slow it down. We'll be all set. Now, what's happening here is we're dipping and passivating a film. We're passivating a film on steel, like we do with normal stainless steel. If we touch it and wrap it, it corrodes immediately. Why? The film is really not that strong. We put stainless steel in there with 18% chromium, and we get ourselves an alloy that in turn, with a little bit of nickel on it, which nobody will like either if it happens to come out, to give us corrosion resistance. This corrosion resistance works very, very well. As we know, 316L has been a very good material. If we go into certain of the steel compounds, finally moving over to something that has more than 10% chromium in it, we see that there is very little, if any, copper transfer onto it, which means there is nothing that is happening chemically or electrochemically. Here is a very interesting piece of information which says that we transfer nothing on a 316L piece of material. If we tap it, it has a very coherent oxide layer on it. Stainless steel is only stainless because it happens to be passivated. Thick chromium oxide. Thick chromium oxide. Versus any other material we can see, if we can fast forward this, we'll get into the next portion. Okay, we can stop it now. Thank you. If we have crevices that are not touched by oxygen, corrosion can occur on 316 stainless. Very, very simply, corrosion can occur. And to show you this, there's a little experiment that we did which says the anode and the cathode forms. This happens to be from a cable which has 316 stainless on it. There should be more on this. There we go. It's a rubber band on a piece of 316 stainless steel. Notice at the bottom, we have oxygen deprivation in this region on the stainless. Let's watch what happens in stop action. Around here, we're not corroding at all. Fine. Watch this. Underneath the rubber band, oxygen deprivation, 316 stainless.
people.
When we oxygen deprive or have crevices, other things can happen. They're called captive reactions. Thank you. You can just turn that off, please. You can just shut it off. Thank you. I appreciate your help, everybody that's doing this. I don't mean to sound like I'm driving slave labor here, but
Get our bill later.
if I am breaking the brake, I get killed. My father told me that a long time ago. We usually have amalgams, and we rest stainless steel right on top of it. No, no. Pits. One part becomes a cathode, the other part becomes an anode. No, no. Saliva and tissue fluid, they're not in contact. Can you get transfer? About 3/4 of what you can get when you're in contact. You don't have to have them in contact. Saliva and the tissue fluid definitely make the transfer happen. Titanium. An oxide forms on the surface. We get about 20% of the transfer off of titanium that we would from bare titanium. The oxide is not impervious. It does diffuse things through. When things are in tension, to remind you of compression, tension, and shear, things happen. Malocclusion can cause it. Lines of Luder, which you all learned in dental school. Delayed expansion of amalgam can cause it. And the tooth doesn't like it either. Self-corroding entity. A lot of stresses on the tooth. This is a finite element model. This is the chewing process. We look at beef, soft putting this down here, and somewhere in between. This is the force in newtons that we're looking at. We do put stresses on the teeth. We do put stresses. When teeth are misaligned, things hurt. So we push the teeth around and pull them, and little prismatic crystals fall out, making room for further diffusion into the body of the tooth and into the dental material. Microcracking occurs. Lines of Luder rot, literally. You see that there? It's a nice metallurgical phenomenon. It says that one part is more corrodable than the other. Even on composites, you'll see these lines. These are stress lines, but they don't corrode. They crack, but they don't corrode. We put these things in loading presses, and we actually have determined that things that are under stress, tension, do corrode faster than those that are under compression. Whitening, Proxygel, 4.5 times the mercury release rate when you put Proxygel with a plastic thing over the top of the teeth in order to keep it in place for a period of what? Half an hour in the morning, half an hour at noon, half an hour at night. I think this is a procedure. Proxygel, 10% carbamide peroxide. 4.5 times the mercury release rate by doing this. If you want to know what it does to the collagen, ask people in the old days who were bleach blondes, bleach, split ends. That's what it does to the collagen. Sealant. Put a sealant on. Without the sealant, we get a mercury concentration in the saliva, micrograms per liter in the saliva of approximately 500. With a sealant on, less. What types of sealants? All bond types of things. Some of the Gerrestore sealants. A variety of different ones work. They all work about the same. Some of them wear better on occlusal surfaces, as you know.
You're talking about putting sealants over the amalgam?
Yes. Not what I would recommend as a way to solve the problem, but I'm talking about minimization right now. If the sealant breaks, or if it fissures, or if it leaves something open, you still have the same problem. Possibly worse. Chewing gum, before and after. Let's see. There we go. Those of you who see this blurry probably have an excess of amalgam. There we go. Before chewing, after chewing, with the sealant. Before chewing, after chewing, no sealant. These are 7-day recalls. 1 day, 7 day, and you can do it. It's almost the same. Murray had done it years ago, but we tried it with and without the sealants in order to see how the sealant suppresses it. Sealant does help a bit. It's only a temporary measure. This is what the phosphoric acid etching does. Opens up the tubules. Etch and seal, that mentioned, leaves the collagen intact. Lessens the diffusion. There are certain things to which these things will attach better. It attaches better to dentin than it does to amalgam. Still attaches pretty well to amalgam as far as the strength. This is tenure. Okay, some suggestions. Some suggestions. Very simple suggestions. Noble metals corrode mercury and mercury alloys under a variety of conditions. Sealers do minimize. Nickel is anotic with respect to both mercury and gold. You don't want nickel in your system just as much as you don't want gold in your system. Gold over mercury should be banned. Plain and simple. Stop it. Tell everybody you know, stop it. Please. Stainless steels, the passive ones, corrode mercury. Stainless steels, the active ones, are corroded by mercury and dump nickel and chromium and iron into the system. Amalgams of different quality corrode each other. They are different. Mind your currents. Measure. Be a quantitative dentist. And at the bottom, when all else fails, get rid of them.
Can you qualify that to just say, yeah, metal fillings?
All metal fillings. Metals in the mouth are a scourge. Plain and simple. You're dealing with ion transfer. Plain and simple. Get rid of them if you can, without danger to the patient. Get rid of them if you can by a safe protocol. Metals will transfer ions. Polymers will not. Composites will not. If you have metals there, there is always a chance of dissolution. Plain and simple.
Titanium implants?
Titanium implants, I like titanium very much. I've worked with titanium. Titanium by itself in the mouth usually isn't too bad. Coupled with other metals, horrible.
Which should you choose, titanium or gold?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
If you had to choose from both with no other metal, which one would you choose? A high quality gold, platinum alloy, or titanium?
That's like saying the lady or the tiger. It depends on how you want to transfer the ions. They'll both transfer the ions. There is nothing you can choose in the presence of an amalgam that won't...
No amalgam.
No amalgam.
You had to choose a metal because you have a situation.
Right. Only because the gold happens to be alloyed with other metals that are not good for your system. I would say choose titanium. Gold platinum is okay. It's just that if you walk in the wrong neighborhood, they're going to hit you for it. There you go.
Don't go to DC.
What about gold titanium? There is a new pure
They're
alloy.
close to one another. Depends. If you have titanium, 6 aluminum, 4 vanadium, you will have a problem. If you have pure titanium, you will have minimal problem.
99% gold, 1% titanium.
Not bad.
Gold platinum.
Pardon?
Gold platinum.
Gold platinum is good by itself. Gold platinum with titanium is relatively good.
No palladium.
No palladium. Palladium is right up there with them anyhow, so you don't have to worry.
They're saying that the zirconium is very close. Come out of
They come out, but more difficultly, because there is an energy associated with the bonding of things like zirconium and some of your rarer metals that is a little bit higher than those other metals. The bonding and the oxides that form are more energetic, therefore harder to take out and put into solution. Yes, Anita?
The question about the new non-amalgam restoration outage, which is a big article in data.
Gallium alloy,
In other words, what's happening with gallium, doing research with
We're looking at gallium alloys right now, gallium amalgams right now. We don't know about the topology of gallium in the body. All I know is that when I was in the semiconductor industry and we were dealing with gallium, you made sure that you treated it with the same respect that you did things like lead and thallium. Thallium and gallium are in the same...
We're going to save the rest of the questions for the panel this afternoon.
Jim, thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry for going over.